Zebras versus unicorns. Most startup news sites regularly promote startups that have landed a huge investment from VCs. It's all about rapid growth. The hope is that any of these startups will become a unicorn, but at what price, especially when it comes to the good in the community. Today, we are excited to bring to you an entrepreneur that has chosen its own path, the zebra path. Kavin is bootstrapping his way to impacting thousands around the world. But what is Kavin's secret? Why is he doing what he's doing? And how is he planning on impacting many families around the world? You'll find out soon enough. Welcome to the Mary Poppins of Startups live show. I'm Naily Makangu from Athena Leaders, an organization that is passionate about helping startups get themselves organized to deliver complex products and launch their dreams, whilst leaving behind the legacy of a happy and productive workplace playground. For those who are new to the show, a few reminders. We love it when you interact with us. So if you have any question, well, don't miss the chance of asking it directly to our wonderful guests. More importantly, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. For those who don't know, today we wanted to unwrap such an amazing startup, an amazing app that we believe everybody needs to know about. It's called KidCoachApp. Kavin is the dad of 2 kids and the founder of KidCoachApp, the app that gets families talking and children thinking. Kavin is passionately believes that the skills kids needs are changing, and parents at home are well placed to develop them. But how? Through conversation. Kavin, welcome to the show. Could you please tell us how Kid Coach app is really changing conversation at home?
Hey, Naily, Mary, maybe I should call you. What a generous introduction. Thank you so much. I don't know if you saw me there in the background, by the way. I was sort of dancing along to the music, really pumpy music. I wasn't expecting that. So that's got me all fired up, as I'm sure it has all the listeners. Yeah, very generous introduction. So what is a KidCoach app and how is it impacting households? Was your first question, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So the KidCoach app is for the kind of parent who, if you're anything like me, you are busy and tired and maybe a bit stressed at the end of a long working day, and you'd like to do something with the kids, but you know that it has to be quick because you don't have the time. It has to be fun, otherwise the kids won't lean onto it. It can't feel like work for you or homework for them, but you want to do something that helps you kind of bond and develop memories and shared experience, but is also somehow educational for them. And if you're a modern parent with a very modern outlook on life, you'll be very aware that the skills that children need to thrive in tomorrow's world is rapidly changing as the world itself rapidly changes. And it's less about math and English and the like, and it's more around critical thinking, communication, creativity, so-called 21st century skills. So what does the KidCoach app do? It brings all of that together. It is just a very fast and fun way for parents to launch more meaningful conversations that build some of these key 21st century skills. And practically speaking, it's basically a bunch of very clever questions that we can ask our kids, which actually launch these sorts of discussions. And I'll give you some examples as we go, and I might even look in my app because it's always changing on a daily basis. Almost it changes.
Yes, please. Yes, go for it.
There'll be something fun I'll share with you about electric chopsticks today, which is a
great
story that broke in Japan recently. But anyway, it's quick, fun and thought-provoking questions that we can ask our kids to make the most of those 5 minutes here and there to bond with them, but also develop these key skills that we know they need to thrive.
That's actually interesting. Talking about stories, one of my favorite one was I saw that on I think it was your YouTube channel. A child that was asked by his parents what would happen if it rained chocolate, which I was like, oh, of course, this is gonna be the best thing in the world. But what was fascinating, especially when you highlight this critical thinking, even as a grown up myself, all I could see was chocolate, right? I absolutely love chocolate, so it was great. But one of the key things that was interesting was how going beyond the chocolate, the child said something about, oh, it will be good, but if you have any allergies, then that sucks for you because you can't go out. So that's really interesting to see that. Put any other way, I don't think this child would have thought about, what are the potential problems. Oh, not just the solution is great, but hold on a minute, but that could actually be negative to some people, and how do we deal with that?
Yeah, that is one of the most popular questions in the app. Would chocolate rain be a good thing? Would chocolate flavored rain be a good thing, or not? And it's couched as a critical thinking question because, and this is the conversation card that's behind this question. So the app isn't just a bunch of questions; it's flashcards to help us discuss these, and it points out that we need to explore the pros and the cons. So loads of pros, which are immediately available, especially for chocolate lovers like Naily and myself. I'm kind of addicted to this stuff. But indeed, there are cons, right? And it's when we ask ourselves, but hold on, what are the cons? Even if we would love it to rain chocolate, even if we are jumping up and down about the pros, there are always cons as well to anything, right? And it just helps children, humans, adults even have a more balanced outlook on any topical issue. And so the child in the video, I think he talked about how it would some people would have allergies, but also it might damage some plants and crops, right, that need water to grow. And I've also to that question, I've had answers like, well, everything would be like really sticky and horrible, and also everything would be just brown, and the entire landscape would be this just monotone, boring color. And it's incredible, like the kinds of things that kids come up with when asked these seemingly simple questions. Is incredible. Like kids are just so insightful, and I love helping parents bring that out in the next generation.
But where did you start with this? I mean, one day you were sleeping, you woke up, and Kid Coach was alive. But of course, we know that it's not one day, right? So if you can we can walk us through the journey of Kid Coach from, how did you come up with these ideas and where you are today?
Yeah, sure. And I'm also wary that these kinds of origin stories are often quite romanticized, right? And suddenly there was this light bulb moment, and then the world seemed to make sense and everything. And in practice, it's more of this sort of slow creep, this dawning realization, right? I mean, for me, there's a couple of key drivers. One is that I'm a parent, and secondly is I'm passionate about education, and so I work at the intersection of parenting and education, like I think you mentioned in the introduction. So I've always been thinking about, like, what is it that we parents can do to build the skills our kids really need, but if there was a lightning moment, let's say, that led to this sort of quick conversation starter idea, was one evening I was putting my daughter to sleep and I was reading her a bedtime story, and it's one of the Aesop's fables, if you know it. It's the one with the wind and the sun. And very quickly, it's actually my favorite fable, but very, very quickly, man's walking along, he's got a coat on, and the wind and the sun say, who can get the man to take his coat off first? Let's have a bet. So the wind goes and just blows really hard, because that's what the wind does, right? It uses lots of force. But of course, the man gets cold and hugs his coat ever tighter and just refuses to let go of his coat. So he doesn't win. And then the sun has a go. And what does the sun do? It shines warmly and kindly. And of course, the man gets hot and takes his coat off. Moral of the story, because all of these fables have morals, you can't force somebody to do something. You must use kindness, right? Obvious-ish, except not to my young daughter at the time, when she was like, "But Daddy, like the wind is really strong. Can't they just blow the coat off?" She couldn't quite compute. And so we just kind of talked about it, and I asked the questions like, who is using force and who is using kindness, and can you think of an example in your life when somebody's forced you to do something versus when somebody's been kind towards you, and like which one did you then actually do? And then it only took sort of a couple of prompting questions like this, and all of 5 minutes. And she got it right. The penny then dropped, and she'll remember that for life. I think, I hope, I'm sure she will, right? This will be this little coaching moment we were able to create through a 5-minute conversation. She'll remember for life. And and she went to sleep soundly after that, and I tried to soon after, but actually I couldn't, because I had this thought in my head of, well, hold on, we had this kind of 5-minute coaching moment just through conversation, building a key skill for life. Could we do the same on other topics? And suddenly, to my mind, we're rushing some of these questions. I'm not sure if the chocolate rain question came then or later, but certainly all these other questions came rushing to my mind to fire off some very quick examples on communication. How do you describe a car to an alien? i.e. an object that we all know to somebody who has no clue, right? Or a tree to an alien, frankly, anything to an alien, because everything's alien to an alien, right? And it's an exercise in conciseness and simplicity and describing something that you intuitively know so well, but actually it's quite hard to describe. What is a car really? What is a tree really? Anyway, so that was one question around communication. I think another one was around empathy, another key skill. And this was around, yeah, that's right. If a friend was nervous to go to a party, what would you say to them? Okay. A friend was nervous to go to a party, what would you say to them? Again, engendering a bit of empathy and kindness in our kids. And they were just literally like in the next few days, I think I must have written down 50, 100 of these questions. Even I just they're all kind of coming to me, and not just the headline questions, but some of the follow-on prompts, which are often extremely important, right? Things like why, and can you give me an example, and what would somebody else say to this, and who can you go to for advice, or what Google search would you do to figure this out, or these sorts of things, which actually really push the thinking in the ways that we want. And to continue the story, but I'll go quicker now. This is now an idea with the start of some content, right? If we kind of speak in like business terms now, the idea was there, the content was starting, but I needed to validate this idea in the marketplace, right? Because we've all heard those kinds of stories of one person has a great idea, they go off and spend thousands of pounds to build something, but actually you then realize that it's not appreciated in the market. Certainly there's no willingness to pay. So I tested it very early on. I got into various Facebook groups for parents. I explained what I was doing. I gave some teaser content. I pushed people to a landing page to see if people would sign up, even just email address kind of sign up for more content. And I said to myself, look, if I get 100 signups in the first month, then there's something there, right? There's something there. At least I should continue investigating. If I don't, then it was just a nice idea. Maybe you'll come up with another one, I'm sure. I didn't get 100 signups. I got 200 signups in the first month.
Wow.
So I was like, all right, well, there's something here. And then the stone just gathered moss as it rolled downhill, right? It just the idea just kept going and going, and so I was able to get in front of more and more parents. It's very clear that they wanted an app, right? Not just a list in your inbox which gets lost, or a website which you never remember to go to, but an app which is just there on your phone, always with you, very accessible.
In fact, talking about that, just reading out a comment from Lucy, I think you might just get another sign up here. I feel like I needed those questions this morning during the drive to school with my crazily energetic children. So there you go in terms of signups, and something that will definitely help on the way to school.
Hey Lucy, yeah, check it out. KidCoach.app is the website. All the details are there, or the app that you just search for KidCoachApp on your Apple or Google stores. And it's funny you mentioned the school run, because that is a very popular place or moment that we actually have with our kids, right? Life is busy, but we tend to have those 5-10 minutes on the way, either there or back, and especially on the way back, we all ask, how was school today? Right? I mean, show me a parent who hasn't asked how was school today, but also show me a parent who doesn't get into this dead end conversation. I know I do all the time. How was school today? Fine. What did you do? Stuff, right? And I'm not saying don't ask that, because it's nice to know what goes on at school, but it's an opportunity perhaps to just mix things up, right? When's the last time you asked your child a question they weren't expecting? There's something to think about.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And I also, one thing I love about your journey is really this idea of, like you said, romanticized idea of startups. As we've talked about a lot on the show, sometimes people believe that just to start a business, you have an ideas, that's it, you sorted. It's a light bulb moment. And once you build it, all the punters will come as quickly as possible. Whilst, as you know, the journey of a startup has a lot of ups and downs, as well as, of course, the great moments. So why did you decide to go more for like a bootstrapping way from your startups, rather than what most people journey, which is just to go and find investment as soon as they can?
Yeah, so the classic tech startup story that you hear of is one of sort of pitching to lots of VCs or angels and getting the initial fundraising, and then going on to kind of raise multiple times after that, hopefully, if it all works, reach millions of users, even if you haven't figured out how to monetize it yet, right? A lot of these launch with free services and figure out monetization later. And sometimes it works. Quite often it doesn't, right? That's also the way VCs are structured. 1 in 100 bets as they see them will pay off, but when they pay off big and make up for the losses on the other 99. And it might not be 1 in 100, might be 1 in 10, and different VCs have different kind of risk profiles and ways they'll push you and stuff. So but sweeping generalization. And look, I never say never, right? I may still end up going down that route at some point, right? Who knows? But for now, the bootstrapping approach seems to be working. And the reason I was drawn to that was I'm not yet sure how much of a tech startup we are. The technology is important in that you need an app and it has to be usable and slick and stuff. And I think we've got there on that. But really, the core of this product is the content. Yeah, it's the content. It's the questions, the prompts, and so on. And that I feel is launchable and scalable as a smaller kind of bootstrap business. You just have to look, as another example, right? Look at all those massive Instagram influencers that exist. People are parenting bloggers in this space who exist, who have just lots of good suggestions and content and ideas, and they're able to share that with thousands of parents who end up following them and so on, and they build a business out of that, right? Even just as an Instagram influencer, or perhaps they then go on to have a good YouTube following, or get requested for speaker circuits, or maybe they write a book, or when they have really good content, I guess is the point I want to make, like genuine content, they're able to create a business out of that, oftentimes without massive fundraising. It's more so with the tech, right? The businesses that are basically all tech and no content, that's oftentimes when you need a lot of technical development dollars, where fundraising obviously is very, very helpful. So here, think Uber, right? Or Facebook, Facebook has no content, right? We give it the content, right?
We
right?
are the content.
We are the content. We're also the product.
Yep.
That's why it's free for us. So I hope, hopefully that tech content kind of thing made sense. It gave me a bit of hope that the bootstrapping approach could work. And so far it has. Like I wouldn't say that we're making millions and millions and millions of pounds or anything. And by the way, that's not even the intention, right? The intention here is not for me to kind of sell the business in a few years and retire to the Bahamas in a mansion or something like that, or anything like that. It really isn't. Like my intention here is to start a good, wholesome, humble, but profitable business, because look, I need to feed my kids and pay the staff and keep investing in the product and so on. Feeding the kids being, probably extremely important in that list. And if I'm still doing what I'm doing profitably and sustainably in 5 years, 10 years, I'm cool with that. I'm really happy with that. That's the other thing with a lot of these new businesses. They look for the exit, right? That's almost sometimes that's the reason why the founder has founded it. They're thinking about the flip. They're thinking about the sale to a corporate or a private equity house, or even a listing on the public market should they get to that size. I mean, again, I'm not going to rule out that stuff later at some point, but it's certainly not the intention as to why I started this. As hopefully my story with Aesop's Fable and my daughter to showed, kind of I'm really doing it for the mission, the vision, want to help parents, want to help build skills in the next generation, and I just think that it is doable in a bootstrapped approach, and I can speak a little bit more in detail about how I've got about that, but my belief is very much that this could be the zebra, not the unicorn.
Just on the point of the unicorn, and definitely we're going to talk a bit more about how you've bootstrapped your way to now. But one thing that, especially when you read articles online and when people really talk about these ideas of startups are really pushing to go as fast as possible, there is this underlying assumptions there that's saying that it's all about the growth at all costs. And sometimes growing way too fast can have a negative impact on your culture, or startups can be forgiven for many things that big companies wouldn't. let's take Facebook and Uber, for example, especially Uber and everything that we've seen in the press on the way people are treated within the company. Do you think that this is something to do with these ideas of I need to get there as fast as I can, whatever it takes, or is just a few bad apples in the basket?
I think, and I should caveat with this, I'm no expert, and there'll be other commentators who really study the tech startup kind of scene who would comment more authoritatively, probably. But one thing maybe that's worth bearing in mind is that Facebook and Uber are kind of network effect businesses, right? And the network effect businesses where every single additional customer improves the value of the network because they're adding value to other people. So when you have more drivers, there are more people who can be taken for rides on Uber, right? When you have more of your friends are on Facebook, it's more helpful to have to be on Facebook yourself because there's a network effect, right? Same with the telephone, right? 100 years ago, whatever it was, when Alexander Bell invented it. When he invented the first telephone, it's kind of useless, right? But it's only until we all have telephones that it becomes useful. So with those network effect businesses, growth at all costs is almost the imperative, no? Because you need to spread to everybody. It really is a winner take all market, pretty much, right? I know Uber and Lyft have a bit of competition, Facebook as other social media platforms, but by and large, there's only going to be a few big players, maybe even just one massive player in the market. So growth there, very important. Then you have other kinds of companies which aren't in a network business where they just still want to grow because they're looking for all the eyeballs and all the free users, and they're figuring out monetization later. So what's a good example here? Maybe Duolingo, the language learning app. So their growth story has been quite interesting, and they've pivoted through different business models as they've gone. But essentially, at the beginning, they were free, right? They were just outright free until a few years later, when they had millions of users. They're like, oh, right, tech costs are going up, labor costs are going. We need to, we have some money in the bank from fundraisers we've done, but we need to figure out monetization. And then they just sort of figured it out later. I wouldn't say they grew at all costs. They were still very much driven by the value to the user, and true to their mission of helping to make language learning far cheaper and democratize it. Because prior to Duolingo, there was more Rosetta Stones, and you had to invest hundreds of pounds into even just one batch of CDs, basically, at the time. I think it was
CDs. What's that?
Yeah, exactly. The thing that came after the book. Remember that?
Ooh, don't even mention VHS at this point.
I think I've still got a few of those downstairs somewhere. So look. I mean, there's a mighty sense in that kind of scene. I mean, one thing I would say that is a major advantage of a funded company is that you can potentially reach millions of users, right? I mean, I would love to be able to reach millions of users, not necessarily to make millions of pounds, but because we're impacting millions of households, right? I would genuinely love that, and that does kind of slightly gnaw at my mind. I'm like, well, I've gone this bootstrapped approach, and I feel good about that, but it is knowing that our route to reaching lots is just going to be slower. It's just the nature of a bootstrapped startup, right? Because you have less marketing dollars and so on to raise awareness, and unless, of course, this podcast, Naily, of yours goes viral somehow, in which case,
it better go viral. And talking about going viral, do you have any more questions that you'd like to share with us? Do you have anything handy right now?
Yeah,
any kind
sure.
of discussions that you can read out to any listener that just turned up? I've noticed we have a few more comments in the chat, so they might as well find out anything that you've seen before.
Hey, Amy. I'll just jump into that. It changes all the time. So I promised something about chopsticks, didn't I? So all right,
yes,
electric.
please.
I don't know if you have to see that. This is kind of the front of the app. They wrote these conversational flashcards, and can you read that?
Electric chopstick, yes.
What would you do with an electric chopstick? Okay, at this point you might be thinking, huh? Anyway, you sort of click into the card, and it tells you a little bit about the news story. which is researchers in Japan have invented electric chopsticks that could make food taste saltier. And the rest of the very, very quick flashcard is just that much. Anyway, it talks about, it's kind of cool, right? I mean, I know they love the technology out there and this sort of like electric chopsticks to make food taste saltier. It's I'll just read it out very quickly. It works by using a small electric current to send sodium ions from the food into the mouth, and it can make food taste 50% saltier than it actually is. The inventors made this to help people eat less salt, which can otherwise cause things like blood pressure. Currently, the average Japanese person likes to eat lots of salty things, actually eating twice their daily recommended amount. So maybe the electric chopstick will help. Now, some of the prompts for children that you could ask around this is, all right, so the electric chopstick can make your food taste saltier. So would you want to try this? For me, they'd be like, is it safe? Is this could be weird? Like, do I want to get hooked on it? Do I? Another prompt is, what if it was a different utensil you could use, like a fork or a knife or a spoon? Would you use that? Would it make a difference? And what if it was a different taste? It would change, right? Make it sweeter or warmer or crispier or frankly anything, right? It doesn't just have to be saltier. So, I mean, if you'd ask me, I'd be quite intrigued by a spoon that could make things sweeter. You know, I'd be eating less chocolate then, probably. But then there's right at the end of these kind of cards, there's a take it further sort of section. I'll just hold it up again. At the bottom, it's sort of a take it even further to really push the thinking and make things nice and broad. And what this one says is, well, some people might feel we shouldn't be tricking ourselves like this. What do you think? And are the following any different when we use artificial sweeteners instead of sugar? Is that any different? What about when we spray air freshener in the room to make it smell nicer? Is that different? And what about when we use Instagram filters to make our online selfies look prettier? Is that any different? You know, so it takes this kind of notion of changing taste and sort of broadens it out, right? And the thing with all of these questions and prompts that I read out, there's no right answer. There's no right answer, which I find incredibly refreshing. You know, at school, 2 + 2 = 4, and you get a mark if you get it right, and you don't if it's wrong. But life is not like that, as we know. Life is not black and white. Life is full of gray space. Life is full of like what you think and why. And that's one thing that I really love about writing these questions and hearing about how they're used with in households.
It's really about it's really about unleashing creativity, right? So you remove any boundaries that a child might have and just ask an open-ended question and see how far they go once you prod them along the side.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, creativity is one of the skills. We write the questions to build different skills on purpose. And it's probably worth calling out just a couple of other ones. There's one on empathy, which is what would happen if nobody had any feelings. There's one. there's one on leadership. If you could change anything in the world, what would it be? I'll give you one more. There's one on. It's a good one on critical thinking. Should everyone have magic wands or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so on.
Yeah. And so as you were talking about this, and just reminds me of a program, again, talking about, I think it was Japan. It's called Old Enough. Well, let's just start by saying that I am not advising anyone to let their 2 years old or 3 years old to go run errands. But it was really interesting to see how parents will ask, I don't know, a child to go into town and buy apples, milk for their other kids, their siblings and stuff like that. And the oldest of the child is 4 years old. When we look at the program, especially looking at the comments from Western cultures, it's really about, how can you just let your kid go out? They won't be able to do anything. But one thing that, reading between the gaps, it's really interesting to see how mentally developed younger kids are. And it's a question of whether we are really tapping or encouraging their mental growth, which is something that I love about some of the questions that you were asking. I'm sure that even a 3 or 4 year old will give you answers that you probably wouldn't even have thought about as a grown up.
Yeah, indeed. It's amazing what children are capable of, and sometimes we don't give them the credit that they can actually do this or think about this. Be it get apples from the supermarket or think about a controversial issue in the news. one thing I would add here is that there is um, there is kind of school backing of this, there's research backing of this, there's teacher backing of this sort of approach, right? So we have an advisory board that works, that's on our team, and they help guide the content development. So writing questions, we check in with them and get their thoughts, and they come from the world of, half of them are teachers, there's a child psychologist, and there's sorts of people. But some of them come from the world of something called philosophy for children. And if the kind of things that I'm talking about interest you, then you will be interested also in philosophy for children. And it's worth a quick Google, where it's basically taking a very highbrow sort of philosophy, seems like a very grown-up word, right? But making it, getting kids talking about it at school, which is actually a very Socratic approach, exactly what Socrates did. He asked very simple questions to lay people around town and got them thinking about things. And it's really emulating his work from thousands of years ago. And there's a whole program in schools. It's called Philosophy for Children. And so we're doing, the KidCoach app kind of takes that out the classroom and supports it further at homes, right? Enabling parents to get into these sorts of back and forth dialogues. And speaking to somebody on our advisory board, he was saying to me that the peak question age of children is 4 years old.
Wow.
I.e., they ask lots of questions at 4, and then the questions die off. And the part of that makes me a bit sad, right? Because we all know we're born incredibly curious, right? Maybe you remember what we were like as kids. For those of us with kids, we certainly know, how kids are always like, why is this? Why is this? Why is this? And that's wonderful, right? So it's a wonderful natural curiosity about the world when you see things with fresh, unbiased and untainted eyes. And it just seems to be that the system slowly erodes that out of our children, right? Be it kind of school and subjects and the exam focus and all this stuff, which is, well documented. And I don't mean to bash schools here. This is just kind of how it is. And there are plenty of very smart and capable people working hard to change that and doing good work on it. But there's that. And then, at home as well, arguably because of the busy lives, we lead perhaps some of our talk on the transactional side of, have you done your homework? And what did you eat for lunch? And, have you packed your bags? And it's just hard, right? So I like how the app gives us, even just for 5-10 minutes, a way of opening things back up and extending that peak question age from 4 to maybe 6 or 8 or 10, or, let's see how far we can keep pushing that curve, because it is, to your point, it's incredible the sophistication that children can bring to thinking. And by the way, we test a lot of our questions out with children, and it's actually all on a podcast, which you can listen to yourself if you're curious. It's called KidCoach Conversations, Spotify, Apple podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And anyway, we test out these questions there. We had these quick 10-15-minute conversations with them around a question from the app. And the thing I want to mention here is that it's really interesting when you ask them at the end, so how was that for you? How did you find the conversation? They always say, Naily, they always say one of 3 things. It's incredible how consistent they are. They say, that was fun. I enjoyed using my brain. And where did you think of these cool questions from? Right?
Oh, brilliant.
It's incredible. Like all of the time, I enjoyed using my brain. It was fun because I enjoyed using my brain. And it kind of, it got me thinking a little bit about kids are fun machines, right? Like they always want to have fun, which makes sense. But fun for them doesn't always have to be rolling around in the grass laughing or watching something comical or doing some kind of silly nonsense or goofing around. Like, don't get me wrong, do that with the kids. It is fun. I do it with mine as well. But the other type of fun is like a engaged fun. It's a thoughtful fun. I get to use my brain. That's actually kind of fun. It's fun for kids to use their brain. We forget that sometimes. So it doesn't have to be homework. It's actually just fun.
Yeah. So how do we bring the fun more into education and parenting? And in that, even there's a bigger role here for parents to play. And I love the question that Lucy has just put on the chat. I've never thought about doing anything like this before with my children. How did parents react to the app when you first launched? And parents are a difficult audience targets towards. How did that go? So if we take it into parts, first question, how did parents react to the app when you first launched?
Yeah, well, obviously, I'm going to say favorably, right? And like, and the ones who reacted positively were extremely positive, right? Perhaps like some of the comments I see in the chat here of, oh, I hadn't thought of that, and what a great idea, and I tried this out, and oh my god, it works, and we're getting to great conversations and the like. Now, of course, there were also, because I want to be as balanced as possible here, there and pragmatic and real. There were also those comments of, I don't need an app for this, right? Who are you to tell me what to talk to my kids about? Or I already have these kinds of conversations. I don't need an app for this, and those sorts of things, right? Or we don't have the time for this, or I also I understand that it can be a slightly funny notion of a conversation starter app for my kids, and that's why I take great care to sort of position ourselves more as like the sidekick, not the hero, right? The helper, not the doer. And this is also why we don't do an app that directly does something with the kids, as basically every other education app does. You plonk them in front of the iPad and play their own thing. This is a parenting aid. This is something just to help you. And I guess my view of it is that in a modern busy world, apps can be very, very helpful to give you those nudges, give you those prompts, give you those ways of thinking, the ideas, the inspiration, especially when you're busy, had a busy day and you're tired at the end of it. And if that ends up making family life better and builds the skills your kids need, then hopefully you can kind of, for those parents who had an issue with it, sort of get over having to use something like this. It's not a reflection of your kind of capability as a parent. I write these questions myself. They're in my head, and I still need to use the app with my kids because I can't remember this stuff, right? Especially when you have 5 minutes and it flies by so quickly. So that was a reaction to the app. Overall, like extremely favorable, but there was this group who didn't quite get it. But we'll continue to work on that. Hopefully, Lucy, you'd be the former, not the latter. But Shaz, if you have an objection to, because I'm always keen to explore and learn more about what parents are thinking. And the second part of your question around parents are difficult target audience and how did that go? I suppose it depends on what you mean by difficult. What I've experienced is that they're quite difficult to sort of get the time and attention from. I was speaking to my mentor recently, and we were sort of chuckling about the fact that I've picked the hardest to access demographic. Access in the sense of you get in front of them reasonably well, right? In that we know where parents hang out, and it's on Facebook. You could do a few ads to parents as a well-defined group, but the parents are so busy, right? I mean, I'm a parent myself. We're all so busy. We don't have time to try anything new. We have our routines already, and we don't want to disrupt them. And even if it's just for 5 minutes, it's incredibly hard to affect change in a household. So that has been a challenge. Like where we've had some success is by making the app as quick and accessible and easy to use as possible. There's no fluff in the app. There's no stuff we don't need. Also partly because we're limited development budget, bootstrapping, right? So it makes you keep things awfully simple. But I think there's tremendous value for the busy parent in that. And also, like we talk a lot with helpful emails and things we send around routine and habit building. And this is key, right? To if Lucy or anybody else, if you're also trying to think of, I don't know, eating better or getting fit or saving money or all these sorts of things that generally people want to do, it's hard, right? Because it requires building a different routine. So similarly with getting into different conversations with our kids, we just need to build a different routine. And probably the greatest tip there I will share is habit stacking. So habit gurus talk about this all the time. So when you're doing X, I will also now do Y, right? So for example, on the way, when I take my kids to school, I will also ask them a question from the KidCoachApp. Or when we're having dinner, I will maybe just before dinner, because you don't want phones at the table, but before going for dinner, I'll look up a question I could talk to my kids about. Exactly the same, by the way, as what you might do for fitness, right? When I get off the train, when I get into my office, I will walk up the 10 flights of stairs instead of taking the lift. Or when I reach for the chocolate cupboard, I would have a piece of fruit first instead, or whatever it might be, right? Habit stacking, I think, is a way to help parents and busy people generally, help them do something that they want to do, right? I think overall people want to do this.
And at the end of the day as well, it does help, as you're talking about in terms of the learning, when it comes to the growth of the child, but more importantly, it also improves the type of communication and conversations that parents can have with their kids. As you mentioned earlier, how are you? Fine. Okay, now I have to ask another questions. Whereas an open-ending question is a way to really start a conversation. And in fact, for anyone watching, whether you're watching it live on replay, I definitely say maybe this is the moment where you should pause the video. We're always going to be here for you, and just go and download the app straight away and just give it a go. Because sometimes when something goes on your to-do list to do another day, you actually won't do it because of other things. So I will definitely recommend that even if you're watching it live right now, just download the app and give it a go today and see how it's really going to improve the kind of conversation that you have with your kids, and also the relationship. And I also challenged myself to do the same. I'm going home soon, hopefully, for a wedding or something. Just always a wedding in my family, but I've got a lot of younger cousins, and sometimes I feel like, I don't really know what to ask them anymore. So I'm gonna try, and that Kavin will definitely let you know. And for anyone who tried the questions, do find Kavin online, the Kid Coach app on LinkedIn, Instagram, and every other channel platforms. We will put all of the information in show notes, and let us know what you think and how it's really changed your lives. And if there's anything else you want to see, well, you know what Kavin is, right?
Yeah, and just to echo that, because you're absolutely right. Sometimes when you're like, oh yeah, I will do that, that's a good idea, you never get around to it, right? So just do it, I would say. It also, good to know, it takes 43 seconds. I've timed it, right?
Yeah.
43 seconds from like being like, oh yeah, I'll do it, to actually like downloading, registering, and then you're in the app. On, if you do it today, you'll be on the that electric chopsticks question that I showed you earlier on, right? Obviously you do this later, it'll be updated.
Yes.
It takes 43 seconds. And also, secondly, just good to know, there's no credit card or payment details or anything like that required. So our business model is a 2-week free trial, and then if you want, you can subscribe to keep the content afterwards. We don't automatically subscribe you. A lot of the apps right now, they say, this is a subscription, it's like whatever it is, a coffee a month, which is basically what ours is as well, and you get a couple of weeks free, but it'll automatically turn to subscription. We don't, right? So we put the, so we're not making you pay without, because you forgot to cancel or anything like that. There's literally a zero risk. It always bugs me when like you have those other apps that essentially, like, it's not really a free trial, right? It's a free trial as long as you kind of give over your credit card details already. Ours not. It really is a free trial.
Yes. And the final question before we go, I'm sure that there are other people watching now on, obviously we're going live on many platforms, and they're probably still wondering, that question that we parked a while back in terms of your secrets when it comes to bootstrapping. If there are any startups or any entrepreneurs that are looking into this and are also possibly bootstrapping on their own side, what are some of the secrets, practical things that you've done, that you've learned, that you can share with them so that they can also continue on their journey?
Yeah, sure. And I'm not sure I'll say anything that you don't already know, right? Or that you couldn't already Google. It's not like I had some sort of secret silver bullet. And if I did, I'd be happy to share it, because it's no skin off my back, right? But genuinely, it was just a combination, and continues to be a combination, of just doing lots of small things well. So I'll give you a few quick examples. One is to obviously know your customer really, really well. So not, in my case, not just parents, but what type of parents, attitudinally, what types of parents, and make sure the language you use on your website and any social media posts and things like that you put out there reflects that appropriately. That just helps to attract the right people towards you, right? Secondly is to use social media channels. So I post a lot on LinkedIn and Instagram. Those are the two main channels I found that work. Also groups in Facebook. So there's lots of parenting groups. And as I mentioned early on, that was kind of where we first got a lot of the validation. SEO, actually, something that really has worked for us. So 2 years ago, I knew nothing about SEO, literally nothing, apart from what it stood for, search engine optimization. But a year later, I'd written a couple of articles which were on page 1 of Google. And even now, if you Google thinking questions for kids, you'll see our article kind of right up there, position 1 or 2. And that generates a lot of organic traffic for us. So it took probably 2 or 3 months to learn how to do SEO, or at least, or at least stumble across one article that was going to work. But then it took kind of 6 months for Google to sort of be like, oh, actually, this is good. Yes, I'll give you lots of traffic. So you have to have patience, right? And that's the other thing I'll mention as the meta point, which, again, you'll hear this all the time, right? But especially when you're bootstrapping, you're not going to have overnight success. You just don't have the ad budget for that. These are things that just build slowly and gradually. And Naily, one of the reasons you found me, I suppose, right, a few months ago when I guess you first approached me, was because I popped up somewhere or had a level of kind of visibility, which I wouldn't have 2 years ago, right? Like these things just grow. Depends on your field as well. One extra bonus point. A lot of people say to me, your advisory board is awesome, and I encourage you to look at our website, KidCoach.app, and there's an about section, the advisory board, and you can read about them. And they often say to me, how did you get to work with these amazing people? And I said, well, I was just really clear about my mission and vision and what I'm trying to do. I found some people, parenting experts and child psychologists and teaching education researchers who are in that sort of space, and just approached them on LinkedIn and Twitter and just reached out and say, hey, could we have a chat? I'd love feedback. Right? I'm not selling anything. I'm not inviting to, I don't need you for anything per se. I just, be humble. I just want some feedback. I'm just starting out. And since then, we just developed these amazing relationships because they could see that I was truly passionate about what I was doing and open to feedback and making things better and better and better. And, the content and the app has got better and better as a result. And so much so now that they're officially on our advisory board. And these are just kind of the 4 or 5 people at that level. There's another sort of 10 or 20 that I've worked with on a more ad hoc and informal basis. And, through their networks have probably grown a little bit as well. So that's the bonus point, which maybe only applies to some businesses, but it feels like people don't do well enough, right? Find the industry experts and ask for genuine feedback, right? Like you have to genuinely mean it though. It can't be sort of labeled as feedback, but actually secretly trying to get them to do something. Like it has to be genuinely asking for feedback, and then things could kind of just naturally develop from there.
Brilliant. Oh, thanks for sharing. And I there's so many things that you've said out there that I definitely resonate with. And many of the startups I've mentored that are bootstrapping are probably failing on some of these areas, especially the part about the feedback one. So we're gonna put a nice article about this as well on our website for anybody to go and find out how they can be as successful as you've been so far. Thank you to everybody that's been watching, and thanks for so many comments. We have a lot of lovely comments and messages that came in today, and I'm sure that by the end of today, by the end of the show, there's definitely going to be at least a couple of new subscribers on your show. So, Kavin, how do we keep up with you online for anyone who they've been on this, they are using KidCoachApp and they just want to continue following you to find out some amazing way they can improve through positive conversation with their children?
Yeah, 3 things I'd suggest. So one is just follow us on Instagram at KidCoachApp or LinkedIn at Kavin Wather, whichever you would prefer. Instagram at KidCoachApp or LinkedIn at Kavin Wather. So follow us there. Always posting kind of helpful free stuff on those channels. Secondly, you can look at our website, of course, for more details, links to more social handles, but also links to like lots more example questions and video examples of conversations in action and what other parents think and say and do and so on. So that's KidCoach.app. KidCoach.app also has links there to that podcast I mentioned before you might be interested in listening to. But thirdly, to echo also what Naily, you were recommending, just go download the app, right? Just go download the app, KidCoach app, just search for it in your app store. It's free to download. It takes 43 seconds to start. It really is a free trial, no payment commitment required. At the end of the 2 weeks free trial, you'll lose your access, but you won't be charged anything. And then if you want to regain your access, you can pay. And if you choose to do so, it's like a coffee a month. It's very, very reasonable. So KidCoachApp, I hope that inspires, and I hope that you'll follow that inspiration and kind of see where it leads you.
Yeah. And thank you so much for being a wonderful guest at the show. Definitely 43 seconds, download the app and everybody should. And I can't wait to keep on, following you myself and find out where Kids Coach App will be tomorrow, next year, and the years to come. For the rest of us, let's design a happy and productive workplace playground together.